If you're looking for some straight-up marketing advice that's super chilled and also a bit of a laugh, then grab yourself a drink and get ready for Marketing and Margaritas, a podcast that makes marketing entertaining. Brought to you by Rebel Nation, direct from regional Queensland.
So, welcome to Marketing and Margaritas. I am joined today by Kylie Porter, the CEO of Greater Whitsunday Alliance, known as GW3.
That's right.
Welcome, Kylie. Thanks so much for coming along. I'm especially excited, and I'm also really fucking nervous because Kylie is one of my biggest marketing and business mentors. The agency that I have was actually her baby. That she founded and started and had for 50 million years approximately.
Exactly.
Yeah, I thought so. And and I bought the agency from Kylie, so that's the business I have today. So it means a lot to me to have you here today, and thank you so much for coming on.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
Okay, cool. So Greater Whitsunday Alliance, obviously immediately can tell exactly what you do and what that's about. It's really self-explanatory.
Yeah.
But just for those who maybe don't know, can you give us a little bit of a rundown on what GW3 actually is? And then I just want to get into you.
Absolutely. Rightio. You're actually being very generous because I think Greater Whitsunday Alliance says nothing about who we are and what we do, but it does give us a really good geographical position, in a business name. So
Which is
really
actually important for what you do.
Correct. So tick number one. But what does GW3 do? Our job is we're an independent economic development organisation. So that's a lot of words. So the way that I best explain it to people is that our job is to look at what our region is going to be in the future. And when I'm talking about the future, I'm not talking, the
next 5 years, 10 years, you're like
I'm
50 years.
I'm definitely not talking, what's coming in on August.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I'm talking 5, 10, even 50 years.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about, something that's so far on the horizon, we need to start doing a whole lot of preparation today, so lay the foundations for what our region is going to be in the future and really start our journey onto that path of
and to
achieving
guide
that
it,
future.
It's like anything, you can't reach a goal if you don't set it, so having that in mind of what you're going for and bringing everyone on board to do it and all the planning and stuff that goes into it, it's massive. So
it is. Economic development by its very nature is not something that happens overnight, and that's been a really big learning, I think, not just, for me, even though it's something that I'd always known, but particularly, for the board and the team that's come on board with the GW3 organisation to understand that, so when we talk about seeding new industry, it's going to take a generation.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, especially for your A-types or whatever, where you're like, achievement, tick, tick, tick.
Yeah.
It's like that achievement might not be there for it. Yeah, exactly.
Likely that a lot of the really new industries that we're working on attracting to the region and laying the foundations for getting them here, I'm unlikely to see them, fully fledged, come to fruition. Not just, it's not talking about I'm moving on from GW3.
No, you'll be the little old 90-year-old lady going, see that, I did that.
Yeah.
And people will be like, yes, Kylie, of course you did.
Back in the day. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
A side note, I love your glasses, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
They're really cute.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So where did your career start, and then how did it end up in ED?
Look, when I talk about, and I'm often invited to speak at lots of places about, this really deep, rich understanding of economic development. And I think that people honestly think, that I'm going to come out with here's my degree in economics.
Yeah.
My background is I have a Bachelor of Arts and majoring in journalism and public relations. Mm-hmm. So,
which would have been the marketing degree back in the day, sort of thing.
Pretty well.
Yeah.
Marketing as back in my days of university with no computers, marketing wasn't even a subject matter really, So I obviously went into PR and marketing, and then, had that business for a really long time, around 20 years. And then, but I'd always had this very strong pull to community and very strong pull to community leadership roles.
And I think too that probably comes a little bit like obviously your family are really well known in the region. You've got like the oldest business in town and stuff.
We're not the oldest business in town.
Oh, really?
We're one of the 4 oldest businesses in town. There's Black's Real Estate are a little bit longer than us. So there's 4 of us who are still operational.
But I can see that connection to community. Like you spent a long time on Chamber of Commerce and stuff as well. Like and that's where we first met.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, that you, and I just remember like sitting there watching you like at chamber meetings or at events, or even like when you're doing media spokesman and stuff like that. Like, yes, your background is comms and marketing, but that feeds so well into ED, I think, because a lot of it is about being able to, it's like, yes, the vision stuff is obviously quite in depth, but being able to communicate that vision and bring people on board sort of thing.
Absolutely.
That's comms to me.
100%. And, because I had played in this, community business leadership space, as a side gig for, my real job, when it was time, when I talk about, the fact that I loved what I did, I loved my business, but my expiry date, I just had reached my expiry date. And when I decided...
Everything has its season, man. Everything, transitioning and changing is what keeps us growing and developing and stuff.
And so when I reached that expiry date, I was already sitting on the board of GW3 because I was one of the instigators. I think that organisations like ours are so incredibly important, for regions, because you need to have a voice that's not
a driver,
that's not a member, a state or federal member. You need to be able to more effectively communicate the whole picture of your region when it's not a government, from
political
a government
standpoint. Yeah,
that's right.
And I think that's where that independent, like you said, it's a lot of words, independent economic development body.
Yep.
But that's where each word is important.
100%.
And I think that's that independent part, is that like it's to work in with government. It's not like anti-government, like governments are fucked and not doing things, so we're going to do our own thing. It's working in with them, but it is that independent voice.
Correct. Yeah. And so I'm sitting on the board. Had, made the decision to sell my business, and the board approached me saying, would you be interested in taking on some business development activities for the organisation? You'd have to step off the board. We are going to an open, transparent recruitment process, but we're looking for a person like you. And absolutely,
And you feel so well, Kylie.
Yeah, and so I did it. Went through the whole, applied for my first job. 25 years, which was a really intimidating process.
Yeah, right. Like still nervous after all these years and having to put yourself
write a real CV. I hadn't done that for a really long time.
It would have been so short too. And so I had to degree, business, 25 years. Yeah. Here's my references.
Correct. And so did all that. Took on this business development side of the role of the business, and then the CEO, the founding CEO of GW3, a guy by the name of Gary Scanlon, made a decision to relocate back to Gladstone.
Yeah, that's where he was from, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so, Kylie, you'll have to be interim CEO, and again, you're going to have to go to another recruitment process. So that's actually how my journey to economic development all played out. So I come with this very probably traditional, I'm not background.
Useful.
Yeah, I'm not government. I haven't got a background in public service. I'm not an economist. I don't have an MBA, but what I actually do have is this exceptional skill to translate. And I take really hard to grasp concepts, and I translate it really well to mainly inspire people, key decision makers, those people sitting in Sydney or Brisbane, Melbourne, Canberra, to make good decisions about our region.
I think that's the thing too, Kylie. It's like you're really good at translating and communicating it, but you're also good at articulating the vision as well. And that's something that I think I always think like where there's clarity, there's energy. Yep. So when you clarify something, that's when you can get momentum and people inspired and all that sort of thing behind it. So being able to, like, I know I'm a rambler and I talk way too much sort of thing, but when I listen to you talk on things like you do, you don't sort of backtrack, you don't go over things again, like you're very articulate with it. And it's what, when someone knows what they're doing and knows what they're talking about, that also inspires people,
Yeah.
So I've always thought you were such a good fit for that role. So it's, and I agree too, like I know doing like some work myself, like obviously I'm the same, I've got Marcom's background and that type of thing, but no like business qualification training or whatever, but doing some work with like the ED department locally, like that's where they appreciate that other approach, because they do come from the government and economics and that sort of stuff, whereas I'm just like, how can we make this fun and interesting and creative? How can we actually grab people's attention and inspire them with their message rather than just drumming them with facts sort of thing? So it's, I think Marcoms is a good fit for that stuff.
It is, but small business is a great fit. Having deep, long experience in small business means that you are, the jack of all trades. You really are, the superb generalist. You know how to read a set of financial statements because, your entire, viability is around cash flow. So you're typically really good on finance. Well, if you've been in business for a long time, you should be really good in finance.
I'm getting there. I'm feeling a little attacked here. I'm trying my bestest.
When you run a business, a consultancy business, you can't be a specialist in any one industry. You become a specialist in retail. You become a specialist in mining. You become a specialist in, if you've got ad clients. So that adaptability, I think, is really part of the key, for me to have transitioned so well into economic development, because I took all of that, long built up knowledge, over into what sounds like a very specific role, but you actually need to be a very good generalist.
Yeah. I think I've never thought of it like that too, because that's one thing, whenever I'm training new marcoms in the agency, and they're like, they learn so much about marketing, but they learn so much about all these different industries and stuff. I'm like, you really do. And the thing is, if you get something that you don't know a lot about, or you think from the outset might be a bit boring, being able to find what's interesting about it is part of your job.
100%.
But then it's also because you're putting yourself in other people, you're talking as the brand and you're looking from target market, being able to put yourself in other people's perspectives and everything, that would also be useful too.
That's key. That's 100%. That's really, really key. So I think that, small business owners and operators often massively play themselves down, and, that they're not as good as that person who runs the big business. Your skills are actually exactly the same, and in fact, they're probably broader than that person.
Because they can just focus on
they've come up through probably a very narrow, ladder. That's right. So, it took me probably quite a few years to, not have that imposter syndrome. And then I went, what, my skill sets are probably a whole lot deeper.
Because of
this journey.
It's been 5.5 years.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that just the other day. I'm like, it does not feel like 5.5 years.
It does for me.
I'm like, it doesn't feel like it, but then also it feels like 10 times more. In both, interesting. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we've gone through what GW3 is, economic development. So you have given us a bit of an overview there. But I guess from your perspective, why is ED important for a region?
Because economic development is incredibly important for a region because, particularly in 2023, so if we're to talk about the place where our world is at right now, there is no such thing as set and forget.
Okay.
So the industries...
Can't just expect things to happen.
Correct. And the industries that, we are very comfortable with, calling our own in this region are going to look very different.
Lots of industries are.
In the next 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. And some of them, will be reaching the end of their life because of, changes in, technology and the way the world works. So if we don't take that view that your economy is something that always needs to be worked on, we're going to find ourselves in a position that's incredibly difficult. And, I love this region. I passionately love this region. I have 140 years worth of business and community and family connection to this region. I want this region to be healthy and vibrant in 140 years' time, and that means that we can't take our foot off the pedal, and it also means that we can't just sit back, cross our fingers,
and hope someone else will take care of it, or that the universe will work out. It's that it'll fucking magic or whatever.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's taking control.
It's taking control of our fortunes because we're an incredibly fortunate region.
We do. We actually are really blessed in so many ways.
Correct. So it's about I like to focus. I like to call this as GW3 focuses on what's strong, not what's wrong. So good economic development is about harnessing our power for the future. That's what we're doing.
Oh man, it sounds like a lot of effort, I'm not going to lie. Do you ever just wish that you'd be nice to just have a day job, you just turn up, do a few bits and pieces, go home, pat yourself on the back?
Look, I can say without one word of a lie that this is not that job.
Yeah.
This is the job where I go, I don't understand anything about precision fermentation. What does that even mean? But yet now I speak everywhere about
the importance and what precision fermentation can do for you.
That's right. And would be regarded as, one of Queensland's, experts around a biomanufacturing, industry.
It's what I always thought of you. I mean, I think of Kylie Porter, I think biomanufacturing. It just goes end.
That's exactly right.
Actually, I always find too, between because obviously we've got GW3 as a client, we have RDA, GW, and then council.
Yeah.
And so between proofing all of the different things for you guys, I do learn a lot about all these things too, but luckily I don't have to talk about them.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's an example of ED in action?
An example of ED, economic development in action, we have a lot of them, but probably one of the ones that I like to use as a best case example, and it's also a little bit sexy, is, later this year, Australia will become the 12th country to enter commercial space launches.
Oh, right, yes, I know what you're talking about now. Mm-hmm.
That actually is going to happen from Bowen.
How cool is that?
Exactly.
Little old Bowen.
Little old Bowen. Now, when we first started working with Gilmore Space 5 years ago, now they're the proponents, they're the ones who'll be doing that launch, I remember going, I don't understand this. This is never going to happen. How can Bowen possibly be part of the international space race? And good economic development is about really going back to focusing on what's strong, so making sure that your research and your analysis and the evidence base is there.
Yeah, you don't want pie in the sky dreams. It does actually
we're no more chasing butterflies anymore.
Yeah.
And the business case for that really stacked up. It's going in a state development area that is already in existence in Bowen at Abbott Point. The location is perfectly suited, for launching, low orbital satellites. There isn't a residential community close by,
be affected by
that could be affected. Bowen is uniquely located in terms of that once those satellites get into low orbit, they can actually have southern hemisphere and some parts of northern, hemisphere coverage. So there's some sciencey, spacey aperture stuff that actually stacked up. Beautifully, our region's long, deep history in mining means that we actually have this, workforce that are really actually high tech, and a
lot of engineers, a lot of IP, a lot of patents and stuff in this region.
A lot of great people who just
not just engineers,
provide solutions for problems.
Yeah.
Or really want to understand how things work.
How things work, make it better, what's the problem, how can we solve it? That's what we do really well.
Those skills are perfectly suited for launch operations. Those skills are perfectly suited for maintenance operations, and so how we actually work with Gilmore and work with the Queensland Government about making sure that our region's businesses have an opportunity to connect in with the space industry, but also our education, so our workforce development team work very closely around what can we do to start embedding
that pipeline of people that need to be actually filling those jobs and
exactly
stuff.
Right. So working with our vets, so the vocational education and training supplies,
school leavers, reskilling.
Correct. That's an example of economic development. It's not just about come and build a dam or come and, it's more than just genuine, it's more than just pieces of infrastructure. It's about embedding opportunity into all levels of your supply chain.
And I think too, when it's a win-win for everybody as well, like it's not just sort of like come use us. It's like, no, look, this is how we stack up. Like it's not just the location, it's also the environment, it's also the people, it's, you know what I mean? Like, and when all of those things are ticked, like, like I said, strong business case.
You know, and you look at an example like, you know, the Bowen Spaceport, which is what it's called, you know, that launch will happen, that first launch will happen sometime, you know, this year, later this year.
How cool is that?
It is cool. But, you know, with space launch comes tourism, because there are people who just want to see a rocket launched.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, that's another example of how
you can feed into the economy in our region.
Feeds into your supply chain, feeds into your broader, your broader economy. Exactly right.
So it won't just be the big mango anymore drawing people to Bowen.
It won't be those fabulous beaches and the big mango.
It is honestly such a beautiful place. I haven't been for years, but I know, like, staying out there, like sometimes on the beach, you feel like you're the only person there, which is just, you think of the beautiful beaches and stuff around the world and how crowded and shit they get, you know, throughout Queensland, especially our region. We have so many beaches. Sorry, so such a side topic. But it's just, it really always amazes me going down to a beautiful beach in our region and there being like hardly any living souls on there, and you're like, this is living.
Yeah, exactly right.
Anyway, okay, side point. All right, so bringing it back to you again, what do you love about being in economic development?
It's the diversity.
Okay.
You know, so one of the reasons why I loved owning my own business is that, and being a consultant is that, you know, I didn't have to work on the same thing all day, every day. You know, this is my dream job, you know. So for me, I get to talk, you know, with passion about a region that I'm deeply connected with.
Truly love,
Truly love it. It's been very good to me and my family for generations. But also because I can see the pipeline and the scale of the opportunity ahead.
That would be so exciting.
And that's exciting. And so if you're really driven, if you're that type of person who's really driven by, you know, giving something new a go, and, you know, an organisation like GW3 is perfect, and that's me. I'm really driven by that. You know, let's just
what's this? Let's just do play with and poke and see how that works.
Yeah, because that's what it is.
And I think that again would probably stem a lot from your marketing background, or potentially why you got into marketing as well, because it's like there's always something new, there's always something different to play with. Like I always, you know, whenever someone says marketing guru, expert, I don't believe in the term, because I think like there's no way I can be a guru when, for example, like Threads just launched last week and I'm just playing around, like dicking around on it basically to try and figure it out. And it's like when you have new things coming out all the time, you can't possibly master them all. So being in marketing, if you don't like feeling like a newbie all the time, it's really not a good place for you, because it's somewhere where you do sort of, you've got to be, you're continually getting challenged, and that diversity and stuff. So I can see, and then you're kind of like, you know, now you've not graduated, but you've moved on to like this even bigger scale of that sort of thing. But yeah, I can see how that also marries up.
Yeah, it does.
It's like you make sense, Kylie. Not erratic. Okay. So that was just our intro part. That was a bit longer, but we did delve into a whole different bunch of points. But what I wanted to talk to you about today was economic development. Like I said, it is about making sure that things have a strong business case and looking for the opportunities and all that type of thing. So there is like a very fundamental strategy part of it. But then, as we talked about, there is an element of comms, which I think, you know, to me, in a way, you are marketing our region to not just external stakeholders, but internal as well, sort of thing.
Absolutely.
What's it like to market a whole region?
I would say it's absolutely the biggest challenge of the job, because, you know, my job is not just about preaching to the converted. Yeah, so, you know, there's 186 odd thousand people who live in this region because they choose to, they love it. You know, my job is to tell that bigger story out of our region. Yeah. But at the same time, I've got to curate messages that make people connected, you know, because every single one of those 180 odd thousand people also have a role in talking up
You need to bring them along on the journey as well.
I need to take them on the journey. So it's almost like we have two parallel programs running, you know, so it's a first one is obviously about taking people on the journey, and that's incredibly hard because, you know, in the time of, you know, the keyboard warrior and the social media, you know, cranky person, Karen, you know, we're really quick to bag out, you know, where you live. Which I find incredibly frustrating and disappointing because, you know, most of the issues, the really big issues that we're facing as a region are actually being experienced broadly across Australia. We are no worse than anywhere else. Housing, affordability, an Australian-wide problem.
I remember when I was growing up,
pressures.
People would always be like things like, oh, you know, the Mackay drivers, rah, rah. And I'm like, you know what? Every town I go to, people are like, oh, Canberra drivers or, you know, Adelaide drivers and stuff. Yeah. I'm like, you know, why just keep bagging on it? Like, what is the point? Like, it doesn't matter where you come, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter your sexuality, your race, where you come from, anything like that. Some people can just be assholes. Like, that's right. Some people, you know, and even good people can be assholes sometimes. Yeah. Like, there is no sort of like, oh, you're from Mackay, therefore you're XYZ sort of thing. Yeah. Just like that's not true for really anywhere in the world. It's, it just surprises me how people can be so myopic with things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, preaching to our community is one story. You know, we don't, the best thing that I say about our region is that we're incredibly resilient. I cannot understate how resilient the broader Greater Whitsunday region is. The worst thing about the Greater Whitsunday region is that we're super resilient.
Because it leads to complacency as well.
It does.
You know, like, so, we get through everything.
We'll be fine. We don't need to chase that. We don't need to work as hard. We'll do it ourselves.
But I think it's true. It's that double-sided coin.
Yep. You know, so, you know, we have not become complacent, but I think that, you know, we tend to never talk with positivity, broad positivity about, you know, our region, you know, how, you know, its contribution to the Queensland and Australian economy, you know, that we work.
And we're a big player.
We are a big player. This region contributes, you know, a ridiculous amount, you know, so I think that the last figure that I looked at, you know, we contribute something like $58 billion to the national economy. You know, it is a lot of money, you know, that's the economic output that this region produces, you know, and everyone goes, yeah, but that's because we're coal. Yeah, we are really strongly coal, but we're also 2.4% less coal, you know, this year than we were last year.
Okay.
So we know that there's other industries that are also growing and thriving.
Yeah.
You know, so our overall economic profile is big and strong, but also those other sectors are also growing and thriving as well. You know, our economic development push is moving us in the right direction. You know, so we have to be a bit louder and a bit prouder ourselves, because we are regional influencers personally, and
regional influencers.
We are, and that would be my biggest challenge, is that there is a very small group of people who are loud and proud, and I'm one of them. But I need more. I need more members of my coalition of the willing, and that's what I would like to see. So that's my local challenge. Then I have my, you know, heading out of town, and you know, and I genuinely say I drag people kicking and screaming to the Greater Whitsunday, you know, mindset, and it is outstanding, you know, and I speak everywhere, and how I literally blow audiences' minds when I talk about, you know, what this region does and produces, and how much we do, you know, with less.
And because people don't know what they don't know, man. You can't just expect that everyone's going to know your story and what you're doing and what you're about and what you're achieving. Like, you need to be out there banging that drum. I remember on Chamber, you always used to say, and obviously then it was in relation to small business and government, but it was like the squeaky wheel got the oil. Yeah. And whenever I hear that saying, I always think of you, because it's so true. Yeah. Like, it's, you know.
We have to be present. I cannot rely on, you know, somebody else just to go, oh, Greater Whitsunday. Aren't they amazing? Look at what they do for the economy.
Stuff for you.
You know, there is
That's
a
how
lot
life works,
of regions That's right. There is a lot of regions in Australia. You know, we are a big country. You know, we need to make sure that we are visible, we are present, we are dragging people kicking and, you know, screaming to our narrative.
And I'm sure sometimes it's not kicking and screaming. I'm sure there's also a lot that are willing to come along.
Yeah, look, there's a lot that are willing to come along. You know, but you know, that's my job. My job is, you know, to build that different narrative about our region. And, you know, it's not just about our region specifically, you know, regional Australia more broadly. We've got a terrible rap, you know, like...
No, you're so true.
You're either in a metropolitan inner city dweller, you know, regional Australia to them is either a farm or a quarry.
It's just little backwards sort of pockets.
Dry, dirty, hard. You know, you're going to have, you know, back-breaking physical work.
Labor.
All of that. You know, we've done a really, really crappy job as regional Australia telling everyone else about how good it is to live here, you know. I'm sure you've heard me say this before, but I say it everywhere I speak. There is not a 6-foot fence around Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne or Canberra with a big padlock on it, which stops people like us from choosing to live there. You know.
It's not like there's a keep out sign with electric wire where we're all like, please let us in.
That's right. We choose to live in regions because we don't want to drive 10 minutes to work. You know, we want to live within walking distance often of a beach. You want to sometimes live within driving distance of a natural wonder of the world.
Going away for the weekend here, like I said, it's from the beaches to the mountains to rainforests, all that type of stuff. And all of it's within a half an hour drive.
You want to be well paid. You want a career, you know, you want career pathways.
You want a backyard.
We've done a really crappy job at telling that story. And my job is to tell that story.
Yeah. Okay, so from a marketing perspective then, what are some of the key lessons? Like obviously, again, you've been in marketing your whole career and running the agency and everything is obviously from the small business perspective. Now it's like marketing on a much higher level. What are some of the different lessons that you've learned now that could potentially be useful to small business to learn from?
They're actually not different.
Okay.
And so this is the thing. So, you know, I talk about 3 things as being part of our secret sauce, you know. And, you know, as I said, most of what I work on now are going to be achieved well, you know, when I'm a little 90-year-old little dottery lady. You know, but number one, it's collaboration. So we need more coalition of the willing. So you need to be able to, and a small business owner, this is really important because you can't do everything yourself. You know, you can certainly control the narrative yourself, but you can't do everything yourself. You're going to need to outsource someone to help you on your social media. You're going to actually have to find someone to, you know, to be able to backfill some of those like little specialist roles. Have a great accountant. Make sure you're listening to that advice.
It's not even just the internal stuff too. I think of it, bringing back, I keep saying it's about like from a chamber perspective, just networking and stuff as well.
Collaboration, being really genuine and vulnerable,
who's good at what, and
about what you're not great at, and plugging that in. So that's number one.
Asking for help is not a weakness. I remember.
That's right. Number 2 is around that. Make sure you clearly understand your value proposition. So that means that if you've got to invest in, you know, pulling that out, uncovering it. For us, in an economic development perspective, that's around that investment into research and analysis. You know, I know without a doubt, you know, what our regional competitive advantages are because we put the investment into the research. I know it's around our people and this unique set of skills that we have in our people. I know it's in, you know, the value of our agricultural feedstock and what that's going to drive. You know, we know it's in, you know, natural assets, you know, particularly for the tourism sector. You know, so we've done that work. We know what our competitive advantage is. So we're using that evidence and that research base, you know, to drive any decision making. So that's the same for small business. And probably the most important ingredient in the secret sauce recipe is endurance. There is no quick wins around marketing.
It's playing the long game, man.
It is playing the long game. And I think if you're reading any sort of mainstream media at the moment, particularly in the business pages, there's a lot of stories around businesses who had great launches and great ideas during COVID, that their earnings have just fallen off a cliff because, they weren't necessarily set up for the long
business.
For the long game.
And we saw the same thing during here, when we had one of the peaks in the mining industry here. There was a lot of businesses that started up during that time that didn't end up lasting, and it's like they may take advantage of prosperity and stuff while it was there, but whether they're actually set up with good structures and systems and all that kind of stuff. And the resilience of anyone can make hay while the sun shines, but when it gets really tough, to keep on persevering, that persistence thing is it's a test of character.
100%. And as a person who's come from a business that's been around for 140 years, one of my dad's biggest lessons to me is after every good time comes bad, and after every bad time comes good.
I remember you telling me that.
Reality. The difference, the mark of success is your ability to be able to swing between the good times and the bad times, to see those periods through.
Because it'll never be all one way or the other.
It's never travelling in the one direction. It will never only travel in the one direction. It will turn at some point. But what is your ability and capacity and resilience, to navigate those swings?
Yeah. I remember I was going through a particularly difficult time in business when you first popped that adage on me.
Yeah.
And I just felt like a light bulb. And again, I think that's one of your talents, is being able to communicate something really complex in such a simple way. But that meant a lot to me. And I think about that nearly every week, honestly,
after
Kylie.
Every good time comes bad, after every bad time comes good.
And it's such a, when things are really well, it's not a negative, it's a sober reminder that things will drop and to be prepared for that. But then when things aren't doing so well, it's like, well, this won't last forever. What's the next best thing to do?
Yeah.
And just to keep pushing
how
forward.
How do I stay? How do I stay in the game? How do I keep on trucking? That's what you've got to think about. It is endurance. This, when I talk about what economic development or what our region's going to be in the future, to be able to fundamentally, change our region's huge exposure to one industry, and that's necessary, to de-risk us and create long-term sustainability for our communities, that is going to take a long time. We are not going to go from over 50% exposed to 20%, in 2 years, 5 years. It's going to take endurance. It's going to take endurance to build all of those other sectors, attract a new industry in. That's actually going to take commitment, long-term commitment.
Do you feel it? Do you feel committed? Do you ever just kind of go, you know what?
Oh, I had the epiphany probably late last year when I worked out, oh my God, most of what I do, I'm never even going to see the fruits of, And that's why it's also really important, and this is another really great learning, I think, for small business, is you've got to celebrate the small wins. And I've talked to you about this before, is that, we often, particularly in regions like ours, where, we work in a business environment where, people are selling businesses for $30 million and $50 million, and there's new deals being announced for hundreds of millions of dollars. Small business, often can't talk in that language, but that doesn't mean that your wins aren't worth celebrating. Yeah. And so we've got to remember to celebrate the wins. From a GW3 perspective, we call that ringing the bell, and we make a conscious effort to ring the bell when we achieve, some of our small wins.
And I think that helps bring people on the journey as well. So one of the things that we did is that we have in our Slack channels, we have one called Winning.
Yep.
And so at the start, it was literally just me sharing when we did something, when something particularly well went, or, because I got a lot of the client feedback. And so I was just copying and pasting from emails, things that clients were saying that was, the positive feedback and stuff, so everyone would know. But now it's not just me that posts in it.
Yeah.
And literally one of our newbies who's only been there May, June, so a couple months, she was posting in the Winning channel. And I'm like, how fantastic is it that she is getting into that culture so soon?
Yeah.
Because it's like, the other day we helped a client, helped in our own little, we did our little piece. It was very small, obviously, they're the thing, but to secure a $20 million contract. And it was, it was very exciting. And but as I said, that's our win too.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we don't deal in $20 million contracts at all.
That's collaboration.
But, but for them, they felt like that we helped give them the winning piece of the puzzle. Like,
correct. Correct.
And how cool is that
Yeah.
for a little business like ours to have had an effect like that for a client, you know?
So celebrating the wins, you know, because you are going to be there for a long time. You know, it is, so you've got to celebrate your wins along the way.
Okay, cool. Okay, so being that you do do a lot of marketing outside of the region, obviously there are some businesses that only, you know, that really do only deal with local customers.
Yep.
So for example, a hairdresser can't cut someone's hair in Sydney unless they come here, etc.
right.
Although there are other services they could be exporting, but that's beside the point.
Yep.
But just think of, but there are a lot, like, you know, financial advisors and marketing, and there are a lot of people who actually could be getting customers outside of our region as well. You know, going outside of the region yourself, obviously on a much bigger level, but is there anything there, like any advice or tips or anything that you can pass on to small business owners if they are looking to expand their footprint?
Look, number one, so if you're going to, so again, if we go back to that secret sauce recipe, you know, collaboration, understand your value proposition. So, you know, I think you've got to really understand why you want to expand your footprint. Do you want to expand your footprint because you offer a service that no one else does, or you offer a service that is at such a premium that it deserves to be somewhere else, or product or whatever it is? Then that's absolutely run with it.
Yeah, if you've gone from good to great, if you have something that is absolutely primo
And, you know, is filling a void in a market outside of our region.
Yeah, there's a gap. There actually has to be a gap in the market.
Correct.
There's a reason why that's a saying.
Correct. I think what often happens is that people are absolutely skipping that. Understand your competitive advantage, your value proposition, really invest in that research and analysis before you actually do it. So I'm not saying don't do it, but number one, I think when you're really clear about that there is a gap, and your product service is perfect for that gap, you know, go for it. But then do the other amount of research on, you know, what is the drivers in that market? What are they looking for?
Don't just expect them to be the same customers. And I think too that's that customer first marketing as well, where it's sort of like, okay, I want to expand my business. That's what I want.
Yeah.
But going to a different place, it's like, well, what is it that they want? And again, that's that gap. It's like if there's not a need for it. And I mean, in some places when you're bringing something new, it's like there's no need for it because it's not yet known. So there is, you know, something there as well. But I think that, it's thinking about, I want to expand, and it's like, okay, that's great for you. But the place that you're expanding in, do they actually have a need for you? Is there
why?
Yeah.
You know, is it making you feel great, or is there actually
an opportunity?
Yeah, that's right. So I think that you've nailed it. So I think what often happens, I think we've all seen it, is that you make a decision around vanity. You don't actually make a decision around.
People do a lot of things in their business that are for them.
Yeah, that's right.
And
around
not necessarily
sometimes it works out, and all power to them. You know, but really, I think that we would be much better served by, you know, making sure that we make decisions around the facts. You know, like
funny that.
Yeah,
informed decisions might be the way to go.
You know, energy of
insightful.
People wax and wanes. You know, personalities will change in a business, but the facts stay the facts. You know, so I would really be encouraging anyone to make sure. You know, and the other thing is that I have a very different message when I speak outside of the region to how I speak inside the region. You know, so I can be a whole lot more superlative, you know, when I'm speaking to people who are not, you know, my neighbours, peers and whatever, because, you know, locals will judge really hard, you know, the way that I'm talking ourselves up. My job is to talk ourselves up out of the region, and so I go a whole lot harder. You know, that lesson applies. You know, your messaging in your local market, when people are comfortable and confident and understand your product or service or your offering, means that, you know, your brand marketing, you know, may need to be different outside, because you're going to have to take others on that journey and build it up.
You're a fresh face. I've got nothing about you. Why should they trust you?
Where's your credibility?
Why should they give a shit?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So to wrap up, as a seasoned professional,
right?
It's like just basically saying a long time in the game, but like a more tactful way of saying
Yep.
So I just want to bring you back to those starting days, thinking of the landscape of 2023, being in Mackay and, you know, all the opportunity, but also the challenges and stuff.
Yep.
If you were starting a business today, what would be some of the first steps that you would take?
Go back to the secret sauce. You know, so number one, you surround yourself with good people. You know,
And what would be those first kind of people you'd be surrounding yourself with?
Absolutely. You know, most small businesses fail because of cash flow, 100%. And you know, understanding cash flow is number one. You know, that's, you know, you cannot sustain operations when you don't get paid or when you can't pay staff. So that's number one. So if I'm going to surround myself with good people, I'm looking for a good accountant. You know, so really someone who can actually step you through, you know, what's a break-even point, what you've got to be aiming for, that type of thing. You know, number two, understand your market, understand your value proposition, understand your competitive edge. You know, so that's that evidence and research. Don't make a move without being really clear. A bank will call this a business plan. You know, part of your business plan is about why you can make this work and what is your competitive advantage. So that's number two. So research analysis. And number three, you are not going to break any records around performance, money, returns in a short period of time. You're going to
Especially if you only focus on the short period of time.
That's exactly right. You need to focus on that lengthier period. So, you know, as a seasoned professional, I would be saying, you know, you don't go into small business or you don't launch small business without a bit more of a longer term plan, you know. So I would be trying to take a 5-year horizon, you know, because I think that's probably, you know, achievable and you really, but you need to set yourself up for seeing out your 5 years.
Doing the things, and just like with economic development, doing things, those smaller things today and getting the planning and research for those bigger goals and stuff in the future so that you're working towards them.
Look, and again, you see businesses fail, or a lot of businesses fail, where they just didn't think about, you know, interest rate rises or something, you know. So as that starts to, you know, impact, you know, my ability to be able to, you know, to manage, you know, finance repayments or whatever it is, becomes really diminished. Yet my, you know, my value proposition is too niche and is only for that one client or one customer, but I can't earn enough to pay my commitments. You know, we've just got to take that longer term planning view around stuff.
I think too, like I remember
really unsexy advice.
No,
really
I think it's
advice,
great.
but
I just think
really
it's so
practical.
true.
Yeah.
But I think it's tangible. I think it's actually something that people can do.
Yeah.
And on the point of difference, value proposition angle as well, I've had more than one conversation with people, not so much anymore, but I remember in my marketing career at a point where a bunch of people would say to me, oh, I don't have a point of difference, because one of the things is, you know, getting discovery, and you're like, okay, cool, so why should I choose you over one of your competitors? I don't really know why, like we pretty much do the same thing. And I was just like, well, then why the fuck should someone come to you, mate? Like, seriously, why should someone spend money with you if you don't even know why? Yeah. But the bigger thing
you
is,
don't understand why you're good. How can you tell that story? How can that story endure and last
if you can't
long term?
And the thing is, and the other point of that, though, is that if you genuinely don't feel like you have a competitive advantage, like if you actually like, I really don't know, then make one. Like, it's not like it's some sort of like, you know, thing that you have no control over. You can have a look at what others are doing and then go, oh, look, here's something I can do in a different way. Create your competitive advantage.
You know, Mark Zuckerberg has just created, you know, a text-based social media app which intention is to be a kind place. He's just created his competitive edge because, hello, Twitter, there is Twitter already. You know what I mean? There is nothing, you know, yep, there's some integration with some, you know, with Insta, you know, which makes it really attractive.
They've leveraged off their other
products. Yeah. But he has just made up the reason why people should be using Threads over Twitter, and that's because it's going to be a kinder place.
Yeah.
And just literally from saying that, it wasn't even in existence, and it's like, it's going to be kinder. You don't know that, but he's put that mandate on it.
Well,
because the opportunity was there, because the other space
that's going to be his competitive edge,
Yeah.
But he's saying...
Just created it.
Yeah, that's his narrative, and he's sticking to it.
And that's what I mean. I think collaboration, 100% agree, and the same thing, having a good accountant, having a good lawyer, having business mates and stuff around you that you can, and mentors and everything that you can confide in and everything like that. That's all very practical stuff you can do, and it's going to serve you the entirety of not just your business but your life. Like some of my business associates, whatever, and now some of my best friends as well. Like having a good support network, I think it feeds into endurance and longevity as well, because you've got so many people who are cheering you on from the sidelines, who want you to succeed.
Yeah.
Like I know you're one of my cheerleaders. It is. And that, the endurance part, that's probably, that long-term planning and pushing towards that long-term plan can be difficult when you're in the day-to-day grind of things, but knowing that there is a bigger picture that you're moving towards helps with endurance.
Correct.
Because when something gets really difficult and sticky, you can go, well, I know this is what we're aiming to achieve. Is putting up with this bullshit right now worth that longer-term payoff? Yes. Keep on trucking.
Exactly.
And then, like I said, that knowing what your value proposition is, if you really doing the research, doing the analysis, if you really don't know, make it up. Just make it. And that's what I mean. So I don't think that those principles are boring at all, Kylie. I think that they're actually really practical and really, what's the word? Not accessible. They're achievable. That's something that everyone can be doing.
It blocks it down.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate
pleasure.
it. I hope you've had fun this morning, because I definitely have. Thanks, Jade. Hope everyone else got a lot out of that too. Thanks so much for joining us. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Marketing and Margaritas. Find more free marketing tips, tricks and laughs at rebelnation.com.au.